Hey, this is Andre.
Oh, it's the O Monster.
Yo, what up? It's Kareem.
And this is
Shit, things black people do. We do everything, dummy.
Okay, and we're good to go.
All right.
Moving along. Episode 2.
Here we are, episode 2.
What's up, guys?
Welcome back.
What's happening? It's good to see everybody.
Yeah.
Always good.
Sure.
New day, if you will.
I hope everybody's doing well. It's a frosty up here in Massachusetts. Let me tell you.
It ain't frosty down here. It was nice.
20 degrees today.
Yeah, it was like 60 here today. It was nice.
I still can't grow my hair back.
Well, that's nothing new. I mean, that's
what you're waiting for?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you?
Of course.
Oh, it could happen. You never know.
No,
Advances in modern science and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So I wanted to introduce this next segment. Here we are in episode 2, and I had this idea that the three of us, as in the last episode, we shared kind of our origin stories, if you will, on how we wound up all on the vineyard
How we
together.
came together to form.
Yes, that's right, to form the Black Voltron.
Yeah, you only need 3 of us.
Yeah, that's all. That's all you need.
Yeah, you don't need
but there was just many things that were just super similar about us and our families, and that's why we kind of clicked up so easily. But one of the things that we did not touch on in the last episode was our names. And one thing that is not super obvious, obviously, Oman has a non-traditional name. Gary has a
ethnic. Let's go with ethnic. We'll go with ethnic. Non-Western.
Yes. Americanized name.
White American. Yes. Let's be clear with that. Yeah.
It's not even a traditional Black American name. It is. It is. You're not Michael or Ray or.
Those have their rooted in European culture. I mean.
Yeah.
And obviously Kareem's name is also non-traditional. And one of the things that occurred to me in our discussion was my name, which Andre is not my real name. And when I was what I was thinking about was when I was talking about moving to the vineyard in the last episode, one of the big changes that I made was that I changed my name, and that nobody where we lived in Connecticut, nobody there knows me as Andre. If I were to go back to Middletown today and happen to run into, Stephen and Billy, who were the Puerto Rican twins that we used to roll with, they would not call me Andre. They wouldn't know me like that. So that gave me the idea of, we should have a discussion about our names and our name kind of story, but also just the phenomenon of that really started, I think, in the late 60s, early 70s, when the kind of, Black is beautiful, return to the motherland kind of movement happened in America, where Black people started naming their kids these real ethnic names, which I think is kind of a neat phenomenon that all 3 of us were a part of. So obviously I floated that to you guys, and you guys are down with it. So that's going to be the topic for this episode. And
got lots to say about this topic.
Yeah,
lots to say.
Let
me tell you the stories I got. Oh my god!
Are you kidding me?
So I don't know if you guys want me to go first. I'm happy.
Yeah, because everyone's like suspended. They're like, "Duh, what's happening? What do you mean? Tell me more."
So like I said, up until I was 13 years old, my name was Abebe Alamayu Vega, and that name is an Ethiopian name, and that's what I went by. And I'm gonna tell you, I got into many fisticuffs and altercations. Because kids are mean as hell.
They are mean, but I can't believe it comes to blows over the name. Just straight up.
Well, it would come to that was me.
You.
That was my reaction to being made fun of. It was just like because a bebe, ABEBE, rolls off the tongue a lot like a baby, and so one of the things you don't want to be called on the playground is a baby.
Yeah.
And so all the little white kids in Middletown would be like, "Hey, a baby," and I'd be like, "I'm not a baby."
And you would just start throwing haymakers at him, huh?
Yeah, and that was my general reaction. My dad, who was old school, Puerto Rican from Harlem, had a rule. Nico and I are only 13 months apart, so essentially we were raised like twins.
And as Karina,
yeah, and so my dad had a rule that if one of you got into a fight, you both better be fighting. Like I don't want to hear one of you come home and be like, I got into a fight and this dude sat on the side and watched. He's like, no,
that was
guys.
Yeah.
If you both don't jump in, then you're both getting spankings when you get home, and that was just how he rolled. So consequently, we were knuckling up pretty often. But the funny thing about that is, so I was born in 1971, and my dad was in the Peace Corps from 66 to 68, I believe, and he was actually stationed in Ethiopia. So for 2 years he was there, and so my name, or the backstory to my name, is a little bit more complex than Afrocentric parents wanting to have a connection with the motherland through the naming of their kids. My dad was actually there. So the backstory was he was living in Ethiopia, and he was living with this family, and they had a teenage son named Abebe. Abebe and Alamayu was their last name. So Abebe Alamayu. And he became really close with the family and really close with the son. And by the time his term was up, he had made arrangements with the family to bring the son back to the U.S. with him so that he could go to college. Kid was 17 or 18 years old when my dad was ready to leave. So they did all the paperwork ahead of time, and they signed over guardianship to my dad. And this dude was going to come back to America and go to college in the States. And it was like a dream of theirs to have their kid educated in the United States. 2 days before they were supposed to leave, this dude was crossing the street, got hit by a truck and died.
What?
You told me that.
That's crazy.
And, obviously devastated the family, devastated my dad, and my dad told the family, listen, I don't have anything that I can give you, but I'm going to pledge to you that I will name my firstborn son after your son in homage to your son. So he goes, I'm not married, I'm not engaged, I don't have any kids on the way, but I'm telling you.
This is before all that stuff.
That's deep.
Yeah, he didn't even know my mom at this point.
Wow.
So a couple of years later, when I came on the scene, it was pretty much preordained that was going to be my name.
Wow.
And my mom just rolled with it. Like, okay, that's what it is. Now, because my dad was a college professor. College professors are pretty transient. They're almost like, like the military.
Yeah.
Like they bounce around from college campus to college campus. So, because of that, I was born in Springfield, Ohio. My dad was a professor at Antioch.
Antioch, yeah, I see Antioch's up there. Yeah.
So Yellow Springs, Ohio, is actually the same town that Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle's dad was a professor at Antioch as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Chappelle's a couple of years younger than me. So my Uncle Chip kept saying, you guys had to have known him when you guys were kids. And I was like, I don't know. He's a couple of years younger than me. So if I was 5 and he was
3,
2,
Yeah,
I wouldn't have known him.
Right.
Because we left Ohio when I was 5 years old, or 4 actually. But anyway, I was damn sure the only kid named Abebe Alamayu in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And I think my mom tells a story about the nurse coming into the hospital room after I was born and said, "Is it true that you named your son Abubakar?" And she was like, "No, that's not true." I named him a Bebe, which isn't much better, but that's what it is.
It's a
So
funny
anyway,
story. I got an Abubakar story too.
Yep. We all. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
it's an Ethiopian name, and if you know anything about the country of Ethiopia, the capital of Ethiopia is Addis Ababa, and Ababa is the female version of a Bebe.
Bebe.
And
I did not know that.
Korea and I were talking earlier about names and meanings and stuff. I was always told, I have not looked this up to confirm this like Korea has for his name. I was always told that it means the bud of a flower before it blooms is the
Word.
That's
translation.
eloquent as hell.
Yeah. But again, I don't know. I don't even know if it's true. Another funny story is because my dad was Puerto Rican, so you've got this Puerto Rican father, African American black mother, and they give their kid this Ethiopian name. Everybody in my family knew my names, and I was the only one with a name like that. My cousin Pierce, who grew up in North Carolina, years and years and years and years later, he went to Ethiopia for a project that he was working on, and he met a guy in Ethiopia named Abebe, and he says to the guy, "Your name is super unique. The only person I've ever heard with that name is my cousin." And the guy says, "Is your cousin Ethiopian?" And he goes, "No, he's Puerto Rican." Because I always thought that was a Puerto Rican name. And the guy goes, "No, that's an Ethiopian name." And
it's
it wasn't until Pierce came back from Ethiopia and told me that story that I then told him the story that I just told you guys about my dad being in the Peace Corps and the dude getting hit by the truck. So he didn't even know that. He just said, "Oh, my Puerto Rican cousin has this crazy name," and that was all he knew. So that was my life up until I was 13 years old. So we moved to the Vineyard, and I get there and I go to my mom and to Barbara, who we talked about at the last in the last episode.
Barbara Toms.
I said, I don't want to fight anymore. I want to change my name. And like I said, we got to the island 2 days before the first day of school. So this was literally the night. This was the night before the first day of school. So Barbara and Mom go, "Well, if you want to change your name, now's the time to do it. Nobody knows you here." And I said, "Okay." And they said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I want to keep my same initials." I don't know why that was a priority for me. I did not have any monogrammed, bathrobe like that.
Sure you didn't.
But keeping the same initials. So they were like, "Okay, you need an A name." And so the two of them made a list of like 24 names that begin with A. And I read down the list and I was like, no. Got all the way down to the bottom, and I was like, "I don't like any of those." And they were like, "Well, those are all the names we can think of, unless you can think of a better one." And I said,
"Andre."
I think I like Andre. And Barbara looks at me and she goes, "You look like an Andre." And I said, "Cool." So that's it. So the next day, this is literally the next day, I show up to the schoolyard, and the kids are just like, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "My name's Andre." And they're like, "Oh, okay. How you doing?" So we go into the first class, and the teacher hands out these books, and they say, "Write your name at the top of the book." Yep. And I panic. I go, "Can I be excused for a second?" And they were like, "Yeah." Barbara and my mom both got jobs at the Oak Bluffs Elementary School. So Barbara was in the classroom right next to where I was.
How do you, yeah.
So I go to the next classroom.
I know this story.
And I go, "Barbara, how do you spell Andre?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah." She writes it down. She goes, "It's Andre, and put the little accent over the E. That's cool." And I go, "All right." And so I go back in the classroom. I write that, and to this day, that's how I sign my name, with the accent over the E. But
of course, you got to sign with the accent.
Yeah, you got to have the accent aigu, not the accent grave. That's.
I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. The accent.
Yes, because you don't have an accent. Aigu. You lucky.
Accent aigu.
My name's weird enough on its own. It doesn't need an accent to make it more strange.
It's not weird. We got to stop the pejorative about weird and bad and different. It's not weird. There's nothing weird about our names. It's kind of if Krzyzewski, no, it's not. If Krzyzewski, Tchaikovsky,
those are weird.
Broikel,
Belichick.
Those are considered. They're names that everyone can say and everyone can do. It's like, no one bats an eye when they talk about Krzyzewski. They don't. They just say Krzyzewski and they keep it moving like it's nothing.
That's because that dude is famous, right? Like, I mean, if you just saw that name and you never heard of Mike Krzyzewski, you wouldn't say it like that. You wouldn't go, oh, yeah, that's Krzyzewski. I know it.
Right.
And I'm sure he had a lot of troubles as growing up. I know what you're saying. But
Also, his first name was Mike. So
yeah,
you can have the weirdest last name in the world. Nobody really cares about that. It's the first name that introduces you to the world, so to speak, right?
Like, yeah. Nobody calls you Krzyzewski, and they don't even call Krzyzewski. They call him Coach K.
Okay,
right.
So, I mean, maybe weird's not the right name, but just uncommon.
Non-Western. It's just a non-Western thing, because just like what you were saying, Andre, is when you go to Ethiopia, those are common names, and the names that we have are not. So it's a regionalized thing, and that's buying. This is the educator in me. That's buying into kind of the same stereotype and circle that we fall into of saying, oh, what's normal and what's not normal. It's like it's regional.
I don't think mine's regional anywhere though.
Yours is an African name.
No, it's not. It's not an African name. It's an Islamic name. But it's not an African name.
Okay, well, a large portion of colonized Africa was colonized through Islam, and
but
names.
I don't think it's a common name though. Anywhere, it's a name, but I don't think it's common. It is an actual name that people get named. It's not like Muhammad is over in those kind of countries or whatever, or Abebe is in Ethiopia.
Apparently, it's becoming pretty common in Japan, but we'll get to that later on.
Korea is that's coming up as Japanese, and it's like that's what.
Yeah. So I mean, I'd like to say that it's and the thing is too is that there was no derivative of it. There was no like shortening of it. It is what it was. I mean, that was my experience, and if I'm going to go into my experience, not to cut you off, Andre. I don't know if you're.
Oh no, I've told my tale.
And I don't know the history of my name. So my name, like I said, is it's an Islamic name, and from what the folks have said, when I remember this back when I was younger, they would tell me, oh, it means beneficent and merciful warrior. And I was like, okay, that sounds pretty tough. You know what I mean? Like, because, to me,
everyone had a warrior attached to them.
Everybody had a warrior attachment to it. And
me, I was the bud of a flower before it bloomed.
Yeah,
There's nothing tough about that.
But, as it was from birth till the time that we moved to the vineyard, I was known as Carrie. Because, as Oman just said earlier, we were talking about it earlier, that my mom was just too lazy to pronunciate it, pronounce it the correct way. And I didn't know any better. I'm 3 or 4 years old. I'm like, yeah, I'm Carrie. And that's what people call me. I can succinctly remember the old adage of, sitting in the classroom, waiting for them to call roll on you. And they're coming. They're out that A name, that B name, that's C. Oh, here comes F. I hear it. And they get there, and it's that awkward pause, and then awkward, and then frame, and then you gotta. Oh yeah, that's me. And then how do you pronounce that? And then I always felt like it was always, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Knowing that it's like, yeah, okay. But then. The thing that got me, I remember succinctly in the 2nd grade, we had to write a letter to like the governor of Georgia or something like that. And do you know this story, Omar?
Yes, because you were in challenge. Cree was in the smart class.
But so everybody in the grade writes off their letters.
In challenge.
It doesn't matter. I don't remember where it was, but everybody sends off these letters, and 2-3 weeks later, everybody got a letter back from the governor or whoever it was, which is a big deal when I was like in 2nd grade, right? Like, so I was like, cool, this is awesome. And everybody starts opening theirs, and I look down at mine, and it says Mrs. Carrie Frame or whatever, and I was so like heartbroken at that time. I was like, Mrs. And then, I mean, on top of that, you know how kids are, like you just said, that kids are evil, right?
Yeah.
And so kids ran with that like it was like the best thing since freaking, Cocoa Puffs, right? I mean, oh, you're a girl now, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I used to just be like, oh my God, like what have you done to me? Like, what is this, what is this name that you've bestowed on me? Now, this is early on, with the level of maturity isn't that great. So, I mean, at the time I hated it. I was like, this is the worst ever, like I don't like this. Now, it was easier. Now, this was this was back in the 70s when they were busing the black kids to the white schools in Atlanta. Like this was this busing thing, right?
Yep.
And so in that situation, in that environment, it stood out. Now, you go back to Southwest Atlanta and all of our friends and all of the people that we knew, everybody had a unique name. So it really wasn't that big until about that time, right? Like, as we were coming up, I mean, then we had a Kobe, we had an Abubakar that was a good friend of mine. We actually had an Abubakar, and his sister Huette. We had a Cabral. We had we had a Kai, which was like 2 letters off my name. You know what I mean? I mean, we had like all these people that were friends of ours that had these ethnic names, Mustafa, Cinque, like all these people that just had like these interesting names. So it didn't really, I mean, it you kind of fit in there.
Yeah.
But then you go out to these, these schools in Buckhead and stuff like that, and they don't know what to think of it. So it was kind of like this weird flip flop between that. You know what I mean? Like it was like I thought my name was cool, and now I'm guessing maybe it's not as cool because people think I'm a girl or whatever. And so it's on the same path that you took when you got to the Vineyard. I didn't change my name, but I changed the pronunciation of it. Right, I was no longer going to be Carrie anymore because, to me, honestly, Carrie sounded like a girl's name more so than a guy's name. I mean, even though there's many Carries out there, the Cary Grant, Carrie, Carrie Elwes, all these people that are famous that have the name Carrie, but I didn't like it. And so I believe it was right at about the Vineyard 7th grade where I started introducing myself as Carrie. Now, is Carrie the proper way to pronounce it? I guess, since I'm pronouncing it that way, right? But if you look at the phonetics of the way it's spelled or whatever, it probably should be Kyrie, like Kyrie Irving or that kind of thing. But I was before him in my head, like I you know what I mean? Like it was me against me. Now, interestingly enough, when I got to Hampton, there was actually another kid with the same exact name as me. I mean, same spelling, right? And it's the first time I've ever seen that in my life. The first time I'd ever seen anybody.
And how did he pronounce it? Same pronunciation?
I think he pronounced it Kyrie.
He did pronounce it Kyrie.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I've met more Caries.
With the same spelling?
I'm not asking them how they spell their name,
Yeah.
but I mean, I've met more people named Carie, and yeah.
Has it been Kyrie or has it been Kyrie or has it been?
No, it's Carie. I've met Kyries too, but Carie, I mean, it's.
I have not.
I imagine. When you go to like the STLC conference,
Yeah,
just see.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting at. That's my little rant. That's my frustration that you're probably noticing on camera. Is it's like, go ahead, finish up, Cree. I'll let because.
Well, I think I'm pretty much done. I can't remember what else I was going to say about this subject here right now. So you go ahead.
I mean, and that's the thing is, it's like, that revolution that happens around the 60s and 70s when blackness was being reclaimed and redefined is kind of the beginning of where we start to see ownership of who we really are, and not from the ownership of kind of the history that was forced upon us. And with that, I think that the Afrocentric names, as well as the names that were that were trying to remove the colonization from our experience, was an empowering thing. And I think about I talked to mom and dad about my name, because out of hearing y'all, I guess it's always been Oman. I've not had to you know, you get into the scuffles and the fights and people making fun of you here and there, which has been my experience probably since birth as well. But like, I don't know. It's like there was something in the way that they talked about, because mom was they were gonna name me Sule, and then Mani, and
Suleigh's
then
a cool
Oman.
name.
And like the irony is, I have met both Sule, I've met an Oman. I know a Sule right now, which is wild. And it's like, there's not many of us. I mean, there's not many names like that, especially as adults, because I mean, Sule is a French, African, West African name, and you go to parts of West Africa, it's going to be a common thing, and it's a lot of it is within the pronunciation.
Mhm.
But I've met a million Omars. It's a common Arabic name, but I've never in my life, and I did there was one time, I don't know if you remember this story, Cree. We were watching TV at home, and there was a guy in Providence, Rhode Island, named Oman something. It was a white old dude, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what? And I was like, and it was bugging me out because I've only known one other Oman, and that was him. And the iron, and then I'm on Facebook, right? You know, and I type in Oman Frame and ha ha ha, and lo and behold, there's a dude in the Philippines named Oman Frame.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's like, it's not like he's like, you know, he's just a middle-aged guy doing his middle-aged thing. And I'm like, because I'm thinking, oh, this is, you know, you go into the thing about like, why would someone have chosen this odd of a name in the context of Thailand? And it's funny because I'm not talking about Oman, I'm talking about Frame. Like, the Philippines was colonized by the Spanish.
Yeah, it's mostly Spanish names down
there. It's mostly,
right.
I'm like, what? So it's one of those things. I think, you know, I'm one of these. I absolutely love my name, and it was a situation where, I don't know. It's frustrating only because I always play the if I had a nickel game. Like, if I had a nickel for every time someone mispronounced my name, I would be the Mega Million Powerball winner by far.
Yeah, me
just
too.
And
easily.
Even if they put it, you know, it's like Starbucks is my worst nightmare, because not my worst nightmare. It's just annoying because I have to remember, even as much as I enunciate, and when it comes back, I have to pick and choose whether or not I'll be like, it's Oman, not Omar, you know. And it's funny because kind of like the same way, Cree, that you did when you got to the vineyard, it's like, I don't tolerate people mispronouncing my name anymore. I really am like, you know, like if someone mispronounces my name, I'm like, hold up, you need to hear what I'm saying, because there's a lot of power in that listening piece. And this is what goes back to kind of when I was the frustration with kind of wider society that I have, is like listening to something that takes time and patience. You know, it's like if you go and you're talking about music with somebody, and you know, you say, oh, I'm listening to this track by Bob Marley. They're like, you mean Bob Marley? Like, they'll aggressively try to pin you in, or like, you know, it's something like that. And it's like, if you can do that, you can take the time and patience to actually learn how to pronounce the names that people tell you they are. And a lot of it is kind of laziness. It's a fit.
It's
100% laziness.
Yeah.
Like that. I don't have time to figure out your freaking name. Like, I'm gonna call you what I think it is. I mean, that's what it is, and that's an American attitude.
That's that, and that's why I'm like, yo, you know, it's like I think about like, and then also because this leads me down another path educationally, which is kind of the process of, you know, a lot of, I would say, a lot of middle America, a lot of white America, that disproportionately demonizing names that are kind of the ethnic origin of inner city Black people. You know, it's like you look at like the jokes and things that are said about, you know, Ladasha, and it's like, you know, come on. Like,
yeah, I've always had a huge problem with that. You know,
it's like that shit isn't funny.
Yeah, and the LaQuishas and the whatever. You know, those are just. I mean, but you know, whatever they come from, whatever culture they come from, has got to be respected at the same time.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. I had this conversation, actually. I've had it before with my mom, but I kind of refreshed it today with her because have you guys read Freakonomics?
Yeah.
Did you read that book?
I have not.
I read it years ago. I mean, I think it came out in 2005 or something like that when it first came out. But they have a whole chapter on names.
Oh yeah.
Does your name, guarantee that you're going to have a successful life, or you're going to do it? And so it was a whole thing about people that named their kids, unusual names and what the ramifications were of that. And it gives a couple of examples. And it wasn't all about ethnicity. It was just people that gave, one guy named his son Winner and then named his other son Loser. And that's got nothing to do with ethnicity. That's just stupidity.
That's crazy. Oh,
yeah. Well, the irony of it was the dude that was named Loser became a very, very successful person.
Of course.
And the guy that was named, his brother that was named Winner, the only thing impressive about him was his
What's
rap
his name.
No,
man,
like 30 arrests and of all sorts of different things. And the guy named Loser became very accomplished, and he didn't go by Loser. His people just called him Lou. Like that was
right.
But anyway, I was in that chapter. It touches real briefly on the phenomenon of African Americans, embracing their ethnicity and naming their kids African names. And they kind of extrapolated that to kind of the phenomenon now, like that was the beginning. And now you've got people that are just naming their kids whatever. And
they're creating,
my mom took serious exception with that comparison. Like she was like, no, we were naming our kids real African names.
Yeah,
these
not just made up
now
words.
are just made up syllables that strung together.
Yeah.
And that there's a difference there. And I can't disagree with her.
That denies the culture which they came from, right? Like you're saying that this name that you just made up or whatever is synonymous to this cultural name that's been around for probably longer than some histories, thousands of years. And you're saying that's the same thing. That doesn't that wouldn't fly with me either.
Yeah, and but and at the same time, it's also one of these processes as we start to talk about this, what are we actually doing, and how are we classifying folks who may have a whole different story? The part that's also really interesting is in that to add on to that Freakonomics, one of the things that has been a huge part of academia has been coaching kids who've come through around the biases that come from resume bias. Is one of the most real things ever. If you go into a resume, I mean, there's a lot of clips that I could play that I use in talks about like Joe versus Jose. Like people named Jose, if they change their name to Joe, they just drop that S, they get callbacks no matter what their last name is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's one of those cultural areas of bias that we
lost you for a quick second.
Switch, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, I
animated.
I flipped it back. Flip it.
No, you
flip it. The part that's interesting is it's like for students, and teaching in inner city schools where those that bias is real. Like, it's very real where you have white saviors coming in and they want to kind of try to figure things out versus having, teachers that look like them, validate them and present their names in a very, it's funny, it's in a very similar manner. I know that when I was at KIPP, one of the things that we used to do was we'd go in and you look at the role, and I mean, it is I remember being culturally aware enough to say, hey, my name is Oman. It is a name that is oftentimes mispronounced. So whenever someone mispronounces my name, I pause and I correctly, I give them the opportunity to correct themselves and learn and practice. We're talking about practice. And
I got a question.
So I would go through
how, and I don't mean to interrupt, but you say that, and I try to do that as well. I mean that's something I've adopted. Hey, look, this is how it's pronounced or whatever. How much rope do you give them? I mean, because there's people that I've corrected 7, 8, 9, 10 times, and then finally I'm just like, I just give up. Just call me whatever the hell you want to, because clearly you don't care enough about me to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like that's
I give them 2 chances. I give them 2 chances, and then I just start calling them random names. Yeah. And then I just start calling them Bob and Bill and hey, Steve.
I mean, it works. It works sometimes.
Brian,
it doesn't work with my
I
boss.
just do it.
You can't do that to your boss. Exactly.
Well, in like in that situation, it'd be a memo like HR, straight up, dude. You know how to you can pronounce all the products at our company. My name is Kari. It is spelled this way. I need you to recognize that. And otherwise it isn't a slap in the face every time you choose not to see me. And that's that whole process of representation. It's like these kids. I mean, I can remember it as clear as like it was yesterday. This little girl, Diamonique, whose name looked like Dominique. Yeah, it looked like Dominique, but it was Diamonique. And I was just like, oh, Dominique. And she said, no, Mr. Frame, it's Diamonique. And I said, and I remember, I'm like, Diamonique? She said Diamonique. I said Diamonique? She said Diamonique. I said Diamonique. She said Diamonique. So it was a process in which she needed for me to see her. And I remember calling her something else. I called her Dominique when I saw her, just out of a flippant part. And she was just like, Mr. Frame. And it made it personal because she was like, my name is, she made it about her. And in that moment, it was real. And it's very real.
Stop and listen too, right? Like, yeah, it makes you stop.
It wasn't a situation where I was like, oh my, like I got all defensive, because oftentimes when you get defensive when you've messed up, it's not you. I mean, it's not them, it's you.
It's you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, so like, that's one of those things. It's like, and I think about, like, I guess I'm getting heated because I'm your older brother, and I'm like, yo, do I need to come and give that dude a one-on-one? Like, how many other people are you?
No. I mean, this isn't any player where currently. I mean, this is when I was in. This was back when I was in. There was a guy. I clearly remember this guy when I was in West Virginia University, and I worked with this guy all the time. And every time, like at least 10 times, and I would be like, "Yeah, it's Kari. Here it is." And he'd be like, "Okay." Next time I see him. Kari, what is your, whatever, and I'd be like, no, oh yeah, okay.
And no, so, not whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I was finally like, whatever. I was like, you know what? I don't even really want to work with you anymore. Like, whatever, like, and but here's the thing too. Here's the thing too, because it's not just about like having an odd name for me. Like I said, I mean, my name is probably meant to be pronounced Kyrie, right? Like Kyrie Irving, but I don't pronounce it that way. So don't tell me. I mean, I'm not you guys, but like, don't sit there and tell me how it should be pronounced.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, and I get that sometimes. Oh, Kari, how do you spell that? Kairi. Okay, well, like Kyrie, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not. That's what it is. It's Kari.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine that you think that it should be that way, but I'm not going to answer to Kyrie. And actually, I was thinking about something earlier. And I was going to ask you this, Oman, if you had anything like this. So if somebody says something about, like, if you overhear conversations and somebody says, Omar, do you turn around?
No.
All right. Cause like I'm watching TV and I see Kyrie Irving and they're talking about Kyrie Irving. I never once in my whole entire time when they're talking about him think, are they talking, that's my name. That sounds familiar. Yeah. Weirdly enough, dude. Like I never do. I'm always like, that's him. That's Kyrie. I'm Kari.
And see, like when you say that, like that has happened, and I'll be sitting there and they're Omar, and then they come and touch me, and I'm like, can I help you? And they're like, Omar. I'm like, you're not talking. I'm Oman with an N.
Omar I'm like, the shit out of me. I'm going to tell you that.
Right now. Dude, you have no idea.
I do have an idea.
It makes me. I get so upset, and I'm like, that's why I've gotten to the point where I have the sign language and like Nancy Oman with an N.
That looks like you're ready to fight somebody. Like, hey, come on. Yeah, come on.
But, I mean, like I said, but I'm also way more combative about it because it's in that space where like you're gonna see me, damn it. You're gonna see all of my blackness. You're gonna see all of this person that's coming forward, and I'm not gonna kind of conform to the colonizing mindset of just go along to get along. Because it's like, and even in like, it's funny, even you said this, because like the other day it was like 10:30 and I'm like, I forgot where I was doing something. Oh, no. I was picking up food. It was the other day, Andre, when I told you I was picking up food.
Yep.
And like, they have Omar. I'm like, and I walked in there, I'm like, yeah, pick up for Oman. And they're like, Omar? I said, no, you don't have a pickup for Oman with an N? And they're like, no, we have one for Omar. I'm like, oh, well, this is what my order was. And they're like, oh, it's right here. I'm like, that's not Oman. And they're like, I'm like, you guys can't, did you not, like, what is there something wrong? No, I'm sorry. We're sorry. I'm like, okay, it's on my card too. So like when you give me the receipt, like I laid into him at 10 o'clock at night, and I wanted to just be like, just give me my damn food and go home. The same thing, but I'm just like, damn it, we order from the Kirkyard all the time.
Yeah.
You know who I am. There's no other Omar calling up, and well, there may be. I always thought that there was a gremlin or someone like that named Omar that lived secretly. That was like, I'm going to do exactly what you do. And it's funny because my friend Omar Thisman, who's actually kind of ironically, he's a Puerto Rican cat that I know that's a crazy good film video guy.
I know. I have a Puerto Rican friend named Omar also.
Right,
I didn't realize I was a Puerto Rican.
It's a crazy common. Yeah, it's a crazy common name. And he was just like, and it was funny because we got in the same conversation because similar conversation. He kind of rolled up on me when we were in the same room at a function, and they were like, Omar. And I'm bristling because I'm like, I'm not answering. And he's like, yo, what's up? And then they were talking to him. So I was just like, oh, word. Okay. And so what it was funny was someone thought that I was him, but knew his name. It was this weird triangle. But so he calls me over. He's like, yo, this is blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then we talked about school stuff, nerdy education stuff, diversity stuff. And then Omar and I are sitting there. I'm like, dude, do you know how many times people call me Omar? And he goes, people call you Omar? I was like, yeah. And I was like, when I meet people, I say my name is Oman with an N. And he goes, yeah, it's not even Oman and Omar are totally, he's like, they're totally different. Yeah. I'm like, thank you. And he's like, but no, I can't imagine anyone ever calling you Omar because of the way that the N and the R actually consonate.
Yep.
Yeah.
The R comes off totally different. Like and that he's, so then anyway.
Yeah. But one thing because I mean, since and even now, I mean, probably since college, probably even since high school, I love my name now, right? Like, 'cause it's so unique that it's like, this thing that I have in this world that is, I feel very, very close to mine, right? Like, I mean, it's just one of these things, right? More so than if whatever. But one thing I definitely like is that there's no way, because I get asked this a lot too, or used to. Do you have a nickname? No, no, I don't.
Why would you need one?
Why would I need one? Right? Like, yeah. And so
2 syllables
to make it
easy.
It's
2 syllables. Yeah, exactly. And so, and that's the other thing. Like, you mentioned like that the guy Loser or whatever. Everybody called him Lou. Like that was but that's a way to make a comfortable sounding name
an
out of
ethnic name.
Yeah. And I there's nothing you can do to my name to make it. I mean, I've had people call me different things, right? I've had people call me Ree. I've had people call me, whatever. I mean, I had nicknames in high school, but like, but it was like, under my own choosing, right? Like, I mean, it was like, okay, I like that, but like, there's no way you can take that name and make it something that is European. To make you comfortable, right? Like, it's in your face. So, there it is.
It's so funny. You had a nickname, Andre. I was like, it's like everyone had. I wanted a nickname so bad.
I did too. But there was nothing I could do.
And the only people that have a nickname for me, well, one, God rest her soul, Terry, who was in the admissions office. I told like kind of my story because she asked me. It's funny. This is a funny name story, and it actually is quite sweet. She was a black person living in Denver, who would was very, very traditional, doing her thing, very American black person in terms of her. She went to Baptist church on Sunday. She all those things were kind of what she was doing, and she was working at this predominantly white private school in Denver, and we were talking. She's like, "How'd you get your name?" I told her the story.
Well, you haven't told us the story.
Well, my name is
my story. You heard Karee's story. We haven't.
So now we're getting
your story.
Well, my story is very. I mean, it piggybacks to Karee's in a lot of ways. I mean, my name. I can't find my name anywhere. The story that I was told by my parents, except for the country, which is another whole thing. It's like I'll say my name is Oman, like the country, and they're like, "There's a
country name."
I'm like, "It's geography." Yeah. It's geography.
The funny thing about that, I said this to Karee earlier, is geographically, Oman is right next to Ethiopia. It's very
Absolutely.
close.
Oh yeah.
So I was just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, our names are actually buddies.
So it's funny that you say that. Like, so the story I was told by mom and dad was that it means the essence of God and man, and that it is Arabic, and it was in homage to John Coltrane, whose conversion to Islam preempted kind of dad's whole love of music, which is another story for another day. And then Kamau, which is my middle name, is one of those ones that was a warrior, like blah 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 warrior, and I'm like, okay. And the funny thing is, it's like, you know, there was they were toxic and hyper masculinizing any name that was for boys. It's funny because as we go down this kind of path, another thing that we have to always kind of talk about is, you know, well, I would talk about, and that's the story of my name, Andre. Like, that's the funny, I mean, like, you know, it's the same thing. It's like I would go to class and kids, and the funny thing is, the kids down here, you talk about adding a southern drawl / twang / inner city black people in Atlanta. Omar, like Omar. They just and everyone to Mr. Omar. Yeah, and at least they would get the N though. It would come in Omar. It would at least yeah. And it was crazy. I mean, the wildest thing in the world was going to Starbucks kind of when I first came back, and I said my name is Omar, and they were like almond. And they literally put almond on the thing. I took a picture of
almond. Are you serious?
Oh dude, my God. I have a photo. I'll send you the picture, and you can put it up on the screen. Almond. But yeah, like I
don't doubt it at all.
I would fight somebody. I mean, that's
dude. It was kind of one of those.
Really, you think my name is Almond? You're gonna have to come out from behind that counter because.
And that's the thing is, like, I have started to really clown people, like baristas especially, and because I'll catch up like. You know, and they're always in a hurry and they're hopped up on coffee. So they're like, what's your name? Omar. And I'm like, what's my name? And they're like, Omar. And I'm like, nope. And it's funny. There've been a couple times where I'm like, and I'll take that tip back. I'm dead ass. Like they're like, and I'm like, my name is Oman. What part of the N are you missing? And then the other thing that was funny is the other day, I was like, they got my name so backwards on one of the orders that I said, yeah, they put Omen because everyone wants to put Omen everywhere.
The Omen, like Damien?
Omen, like Omen. And the funny thing is, I was talking to someone about that, and it was like, I was like, yeah, this place got it wrong. They left out, they added an E and they added an R, and so they were like, they made your name Oreo? And I'm like, what? Like, it was the way that I was like, where did you get that spelling? Because I was like, O-M-O-R-E. Like, anyway. But it's like, those are the type of things where I think, you know, it's like when we talk about things black people do, it was like, for me and my name, and especially like how it is powerful today, it's like, you know, I'm making it, you know, I'm not going to let people just kind of, especially, and I will say this, it's like not just white folks, but I will make anyone pause and say my name because it's a really important aspect of my identity. It's like, you got to see this, you got to see all of this, because if you don't, it's like, what else are you choosing to ignore in the conversation? Mm-hmm. But you know, it was one of those things that I know that, you know, I guess I've never dated anyone that's had a Western name as I think about it, which is crazy. I'm like, seriously.
Go back to high school, yeah, it's not true.
Yeah, how far back do you want to go? I mean, I know the names of most of your girlfriends. And
yeah, I mean, like, no,
wasn't there a Natalie in there?
Natalie's one.
Yeah.
Kristen, that's it.
All right.
Those are the only two.
All right. Well, shit. How deep are you gonna?
That's high school through, you know.
I said Natalie's who you brought. I only remember her because that's who you brought.
Yeah, because she brought to the wedding. Yep. Yeah. Yep.
There's kind of a funny, not funny, but so I don't tell a whole lot of people my name story. You know, people that know me as Andre, that's how they know me, and they just assume that's my name. But the people that I do tell, the first question they ask is, "What did your dad say when I changed it?"
I had a couple questions too besides that, but go ahead.
Well, you want to come with your question?
No, I'm gonna hear what your dad said.
So there I am. I'm in 7th grade. I'm a couple of weeks into school, and I really embraced, the Andre, my Andre-ness. And my mom goes, you're gonna have to tell your dad. Now, I mean, he didn't live with us. He was in New York.
Yeah.
And he didn't call that often. So that's another
story.
That's another podcast. Yeah,
that's another podcast. Yeah. He didn't call that often, so it wasn't like I had to speak with him weekly. So I think a couple of weeks in, Mom was like, "You're gonna have to tell your dad," and I'm like, "Okay." But I knew the backstory. I knew it wasn't a random thing. There was a reason. So she gets him on the phone. She goes, "Do you want me to tell him?" And I go, "Yes, I would love you to tell him." So she tells him, she's like, "I just want you to know that Abebe has chosen to be called Andre, and I respect that decision, and that's what we call him now. So I just wanted to let you know." And he says, "Oh wow, that's great. Let me talk to him." And she goes, "Oh, okay." And she hands me the phone, and this dude goes off. He went off on me, and was like, I gave you that name for a reason, and it was very personal to him, and I get it. Like I get it more now than I did then. Obviously,
right.
That was a very personal, decision. But I was able to kind of work around it because Andre is a French derivative of Andrew. And is my uncle's name, my dad's brother's name, my Uncle Andy.
Oh, word. Okay.
So I said, "But Dad, I was thinking of Uncle Andy," and he was like, "Oh, all right." And so I was able to kind of soften the blow a little bit with that, and that it was kind of an homage to my uncle.
You didn't tell him about the list of 27 names that you had.
No, I didn't tell him all that. But I mean, I distinctly remember turning 26 and saying to myself, now I've been Andre for as long, or from now on, I will have been Andre longer than I was Abebe.
Mm-hmm. I remember you telling me that. I remember that.
Yeah. So I mean, and again, it's an interesting thing. But what I thought was funny was, again, people. I don't tell the story very often. I really only share it with like close friends. I don't tell strangers, this. But everybody says, "Yo, your real name was dope. Like, why did you change it?" And it's like, well, look, when you're a kid
and you're fighting,
you just want to be normal. Like, I was just tired of fighting. That's what I said to my mom. I'm like, "Mom, I'm tired of fighting every day." And you just want to be normal. And when you're an adult, it's super cool to have a dope, unique name. And my god brothers, who my dad's college roommate got married to my mom's college roommate.
That's crazy.
And
that's still crazy.
That's actually how my parents met. The two of them were dating, and they introduced my parents to each other. So my dad's college roommate is my godfather, and his name is also Nico's middle name. So Nico's middle name is Emilio. Esteban.
His first name. That's right.
Nico's middle name is Emilio, and that's my godfather's name.
Right.
His two sons, he's got more than two sons now, but his two sons that were our age were Hassan and Sekou. And so they were born in the 70s like us. So they were doing the same thing that your parents were doing. And it might be like this was a thing that people were doing in in the 70s. It was very, very prevalent. And I think too, and like what you're touching upon, Oman, it was powerful. It was us reclaiming our heritage. But Kari, you said you had some questions?
Yeah. Well, just really one question, and that was like, all right, so you decided on Andre, and you're at the 2 days ago you just decided on this on Andre, right? And so you're telling people that you're Andre.
Yep.
Now, was there ever a time like where you were sitting there, like eating lunch or something like, and somebody was like Andre, and you were like oblivious, like
I don't think so. I pretty much adopted it right away. And
really?
What I thought was fascinating, what I still think was fascinating, was everybody in my family switched over. Nobody called me Abebe after that.
But that's that's how it was at the vineyard with my name either.
Nico and Livy
and
my mom. My extended family. I mean, our families are very similar. I've said for years that the Dardens and the Freelons are like carbon copies of each other. They're just super similar.
Yeah.
And Janice is the first, oldest on the Darden side. My mom is the oldest on the Freelon side, and so me and Oman are the first grandchildren on that side. So all of my cousins are all younger than me, just like all of your cousins on the Darden side are all
younger than me. Yep.
Than you.
Weird.
So they all was like I said, Pierce is 12 years younger than I am, and he was like, "Yeah, I got this cousin in Massachusetts with this crazy name," and then it was like I just changed it, and it was like so. But when I changed it, I was 13, so Pierce was 1.
Oh right, yeah. So he really only knew you as
he only knew me as Andre. So I was always just very, not necessarily surprised, but very appreciative that my family just kind of co-signed it and rolled with it. Now, what I think is also funny, what Kareed just shared with me before we started this recording, was that he actually asked Janice and Leo if he could change it, and they were like, "Hell no, hell no!" And so, if my dad probably lived with us, he probably would have shot it down.
Well, it wasn't so much of a straight up asking, "This is what I want to do," but I was just, I remember succinctly telling Mom, like, "Hey, I don't like this name. It's hard to, blah blah blah." I was, 5th grade, 4th grade, something like that, and I was like, I wanted something normal, you know what I mean, like as kids do, and I told Mom about it, I believe, in my memory, and I was like, I want to be called Kevin. Or something like that, and it was like, no way.
Can you even imagine that?
No. But it was. I for some weird reason, like what Andre said earlier, hit a chord. Like I needed it to still be a K name.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why or whatever. I was like, well, what's a cool K name? Kevin.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin. There's nothing wrong with Kevin, but it's not me. Like but see, that's what I'm saying. Like as I grew older and as I got like into the whole thick of everything, like I'm not anybody but Kareed. Like that's who I am, right? Like I can't
believe. That's tripping me out that I didn't know that story, because I was like, "What?"
Oh,
that's ADD kicking in full time.
Well, it was a very fleeting story, right? Like, I mean, it was probably happened in an instant, and it was like probably one day where I probably got picked on for my name or something like that, and I was like, I'm done with this name. And I'm sure Mom came in and was like, it's a strong name and it means this and it's unique, and you know how Mom is. But
dude,
I mean, for the longest time too, I never told anybody what my middle name was because it was such a weird name, right?
Oh, but it's dope.
It's dope now, yeah. Like
it's a French name. That's a French surname.
Exactly. Like I mean, and now that I look at it, I am a little bit embarrassed to even say that I was afraid to say what it was, because like it's Duvernay.
Duvernay.
Yeah.
Oui.
Exactly. Which is entirely compromised of where my family comes from, right? Like they're French Creole and from Louisiana, like all that area stuff down there. But it was also my grandmother's maiden name.
Yeah.
So for me to be like that name is whack, it's like completely disrespecting that whole line, right?
Yeah.
And so after a certain time, I was like, yeah, that's completely disrespectful. You know what I mean? For me to be like, that name is whack. I don't want to tell anybody because I'm ashamed of it. Mm-hmm. So,
I think it's
yeah. You would think about it, like Kareed Duvernay Frame. I mean, Frame is kind of weak when it comes to that whole thing. But actually, odd thing about the last name Frame is that when people hear Kareed, they hear Oman, and they hear your last name, they want to make your last name exotic somehow.
They want to make it different.
So, what's your first name? And is it how do you say your first name? Kareed. Okay. Is your last name like Frame? And it's like, what?
Oh, dude.
No.
The Frame thing is what drives me nuts, yo.
Yeah, is it Frame?
Yo.
And it's like, just because my first crap. Yeah, I mean,
Kwame
Frame.
No, I guess his name is Kwame.
But what's interesting though is that I think Frame is a very unique last name too. There's not too many, it's not like,
well, yeah, when we got to get when we do round 2 of this, we got to get Papa Leo to talk about that, because he's got the whole etymology of it, which is crazy.
To tell you the joke one about it, the flame one. Yeah, get him a couple cognacs, and he'll maybe tell you that story.
All right.
But even Steph, my wife, has said that people will come up to her and don't really know how to pronounce the last name. And I'm like, it doesn't really get much simpler than this.
It's completely frenetic. Like, just read it.
Just read
No, it's a window or a picture or it's a framing stories. It's like, frame the conversation.
What's right behind you on the wall there? A bicycle has a frame. I mean, it's not difficult. But I think, when they hear the ethnic first name, they got to imagine that it comes from some other country or something like that. But I get that a lot too. Like, where are you from? You know what I mean? Based on maybe the way I look and the name and everything like that. But honestly, the one I've gotten the most is like from the islands, from like Jamaica. You know what I mean? Or West Indies. Apparently, there's a lot of light-skinned dudes over in the West Indies that look kind of like me. I guess, Sean Paul and the likes. I guess I don't know.
I used to get Cape Verdean a lot. People would.
That's because in New England.
That's a big thing.
New England,
here. One of the funny stories talk about names. So my dad's name was Esteban, which is Stephen in Spanish. It's not an uncommon.
I'm not looking around at nothing. I'm just trying. I got to plug in and I got to find a plug. So.
Well, my mom told me, people used to butcher his name, especially when we were in Connecticut at Wesleyan. People would call and they, Esteban to me is very simple.
Yes, it is basic.
But people would say Esteban.
Esteban
was one that they would say. But she said the worst was somebody called the house and they asked for Este von Vega, like he was German or something.
Like it was a vampire.
Could I speak to Este von Vega? And I was like, what? The count is the count is here?
Yeah.
Count von Vega? I was like, that's wild.
Hello.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I would like very much.
I want to talk to Esteban von Vega.
Von Vega.
No, but it's funny that you say that because one thing I was going to say earlier, before the Jamaican light skinned guy started talking, was was when Naima and I talked about naming our kids, because our kids have an interesting thing that, and this is taken directly from Naima. They don't have they came home from the hospital without their name.
Yep.
Soraya's name was Littlefoot on her birth certificate, and Uchenna's was Beanie. So like and we had to go through the legal process because we wanted to get to know them, which is interesting because in the conversation, it's a really powerful thing. It's the one thing that you can have kind of the do-over, but it really kind of sets the tone. It's funny, Andre, that you say that because like for me, it's an easy switch for you, a Bebe or Andre. And I remember you told me that story early on in our relationship. Like that was one.
I think it was on the walk.
Because I was like, and I remember it being like, okay, well, because honestly, it's like your name fits. There's a presence about it as well. But like, with having two, Black children in America growing up with names that are difficult to pronounce for a lot of Western folks. And it's very funny because the same kind of zeal and zest that I have for my name in terms of correcting people and shutting people down, my kids have it hardcore. Like number 2 will be in class like, it's not Uchenna.
I know this.
Yeah, she's like, it's not Uchenna. It's not Uchenna. It's Uchenna. It's U. I mean, she caps on kids.
I could definitely hear her saying something,
dude,
like that.
And it's hilarious. And she'll like, no, Joe. Like she'll call the teacher straight out. Like she'll come off mute and be like, it's not Uchenna. It's Uchenna. Click right off. I'm not kidding. I've heard her check. And then the teachers are like, oh, and then kids, and it is hilarious because there's a level of I don't want to say, not pride is not the word. There's a level of like dignity and honor that she carries with that name. And it's because, with her, we went back and forth with what her name was going to be. And in one school she was one thing, and the other school she was another. And it's like Soraya is the only one who's kind of had the, and Soraya's name came to Naima in a dream, which is really cool, and that's why it is what it is. It's like, it's this beautiful name and they have such intense meanings, and they're they're having these conversations with their teachers and their classmates around what their meanings are. And it's like, when we're in this process about things Black people do, one of the things that Black people do is claim ownership when, at this point in our lives. And this is that whole reclamation. And so I do see it coming back with a lot of the history that's being retaught in schools, and the kind of missed world that we live in because of what was taken away from us. And I think that especially when we start talking about culture, it's like there was so much of our culture that was taken away from us. And this was one way that we're kind of bringing it back. I mean, I think the fact that, the mayor, hold on a second. I think it's Oxford, Mississippi. And like, it's not Oxford, Mississippi. It's a representative. Hold on.
With a odd name, or not odd name, but with a ethnic name.
Powerful, yes. I mean, like, it was this guy. No, he's a mayor. Oh,
I mean, it's definitely become a little bit more accepted. I don't say accepted, but I mean, it's
he's
not.
He's the.
Oh,
his name is Chokwe Lumumba, and he's the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. He was the former mayor of Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah. So like, that is from Mississippi. I mean, come on, we're talking about for them to do that and to learn and say his name. I mean, he was elected,
they gotta be able to pronounce his name. I mean, let's be honest. The president's name was Barack. So yeah, I mean, that level of acceptance has definitely, kind of transcended any kind of, local, people were able to get behind Barack and elect him to be the president of the United States. So
yeah, and honestly, I think that has a lot to do with like the people of our parents' generations naming him. It maybe my name wasn't as common as others, but there was so many different names out there that weren't just the standard, the standard 8 or whatever that would be. You know what I mean? Or I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. So like, by the time that people, of somebody like Barack Obama, or because the people that are doing these things now are basically in our age group, right? I mean, these are the people that are now in these positions of power around the world, and they have these names that are not
not
Western, right? And therefore it allows a more global acceptance of different names. You may not like it, but you're going to accept it, And so, and it's sad to say, but I feel like sometimes sports will be the great bridger of those things. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
These kids will come in from these lower income or higher income, even affluent Black families that have these names that are very ethnical and very, very. Some of them even come from these countries, right? Like some of them come from Africa, some of them come from Puerto Rico, some of them come, they're coming from all over the place now. But
Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah, Dikembe Mutombo.
That dude sounds like he's gargling glass.
I've got a funny Dikembe story that I'll share with you afterwards. I don't want to put that out there, but it's a funny one from kids that knew him at Georgetown or whatever.
Oh man.
Yeah. But anyway,
we've been chewing on this topic for about an hour, and I think it's been fun, and I think we definitely need to revisit it. What I'd like to do at a later episode is bring in Janice and Randy and talk about what it was like in the 70s when this kind of phenomenon was really just kind of starting. I mean, I know my mom had college classmates that were changing their names from Vivian to
we had that at Hampton.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that it was definitely a movement.
Yeah.
That I think is worth exploring because it's things that Black people do.
It is the things that black people do.
Sing songy, I like it.
You know?
Ding, 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 ding.
So,
Remember how last time you were saying you were losing me?
We're losing you now. You got up and left. I mean,
Yeah.
I had to plug the
The
I had
blank
to plug
screen.
the pewter in. I had to plug the pewter in. I had to plug the pewter in.
The pewter.
Whatever, Omar.
Oh, that's right, Kyrie.
All right. We'll be throwing down in a minute. No, this has been super fun.
Time to bother.
Again. And we have to, all right. Oman's done again.
I'm not done. I was just making Kareem laugh.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Chandipal.
Yeah, that's me. All right, yeah, no. Yeah, this is gonna be out on YouTube. Are we gonna tell people to subscribe? Are we gonna tell people to like it?
Click that button and like it and subscribe.
Yeah.
We'll get some sponsors in here. Oman wants to start doing fake commercials.
Dude, I
Commercial
want to do
break.
fake commercials.
Oh, look at this.
Yes.
Yeah, I was showing this to Andre. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
Can you read
What's
that?
that?
You can't read it.
Nope.
I can't read
I
it.
can't because you're still sharing your screen. So like I
Oh.
can just see you as like a little thumbnail. So I'm like,
Oh, it's-
my old ass eyes.
well, watch the podcast and you'll see what it says at the end there.
What?
It says Kari.
Yeah, it's one of these
a
pop
female
figures
anime character is named Kari.
from Kingdom Hearts. I've my name has made it to the.
Well, that's the funny. The etymology of it that I just found was like they're like Japanese,
I
and
know,
I'm like,
and it's not Japanese. But if you look up Kari Muslim or Kari
I've done
Islam,
that. That's what I did.
and it does
Yep.
come. It shows
Yep.
up there too as a boy's name, right? Because
Yeah,
it says
yeah,
it's a
boy's
unisex name. Anyway, we're going back into this topic.
yo,
we're
Andre,
drifting
Andre,
off here.
Andre,
Oh,
Andre, listen to this. Listen to this. Listen to this. Ready?
All right.
Yeah, buddy.
Is that how you're gonna pronounce your next son's name?
Grrr.
I don't know. What does that have to do with anything?
It's just because you lost me, and now I'm
He's building that wheel
Oh, all right.
yes, I'm rebuilding the wheel,
from
and
scratch.
it has clickety clicks. It's got lots of clickety clicks.
Shandapal.
Chandipal.
I'm gonna go listen to some Sean Paul. All right, guys, let's go before
All
we
right,
end up losing the
brothers.
thing. It's
Yeah.
good chatting to you. Good seeing you.
Talking to you.
Always good.
This closes out episode number 2, and we will see you all on the next one.
All right.
Yeah.